if you guys want this 5-page handout emailed to you, you can email Erin, and she can email this to you if you guys want that.
Okay, so can you guys hear me better now?
Yes, much better.
All right, yeah, so something's up with my laptop, but the iPad is working just fine. Okay, so why don't we just go ahead and get right into it? We have a good amount of people here, and what I can tell you, so it's a 5-page presentation. I'll be more than happy to answer questions as we go through this. If you guys want a copy of this PDF, you can email Erin here. Her email, Erin at Vazquez and Family Inc. Erin will be able to email this to you, so you guys have it if you guys want this email to yourselves. Okay. So we're going to talk about Prop 19, how it works, what happens if someone wants to sell a house and buy. There's a big time calculation that I'll tell you guys how that works, and it's really good information. And then we'll also go over kind of the negative side of Proposition 19 with inherited properties, inherited investment properties. There's going to be some big changes there. So dive right into it. Here's the first example that we'll want to go through. Okay, so seniors over 55, this is essentially who Proposition 19 is applying to for the most part. Okay, they're going to be able to utilize Proposition 19 up to 3 times during their lifetime. Okay, and this comes into effect after April 21st. All right, and then once someone sells their property that they currently live in, they have a very convenient 2 years to purchase a replacement property. So they give people plenty of time to find that replacement property. 2 years, which is plenty of time. So it's very straightforward when someone is going to sell a property and then buy a property that costs less than the property that they currently live in. So here's a quick example here. Let's say someone, a 55-year-old senior, they currently live in a home, they purchase, and these numbers here, I'm just using numbers just to kind of just drive the points home, okay? But let's say someone bought a house in 1975 for $125,000. I'm just making this up, okay? And they want to sell on after April 21st, April 22nd. And it's looking like the property that they're going to sell is worth $950,000. Okay. And then based on their annual property tax assessment, their current property tax basis value is $245. Okay. So assume a 1% property tax rate. This homeowner's property tax payment per year is about $2,450 based off of this $245,000 property tax assessment basis value. Okay, and again, they're going to sell their house for $950 and buy a replacement property. So they're going to sell this property for $950 and they want to buy a home within 2 years, and the property that they want to buy a new home in, it's worth $875,000. So because this new home that cost $875,000 and the fair market value sales price of the old home was $950,000, again, the new property costs less than what the original property sold for. So in this scenario, they simply just carry forward their property tax assessment basis value, this $245. It gets carried forward. Without Proposition 19, they could potentially have their property taxes reassessed at that $875,000 purchase price for the property that they're replacing it. And again, assuming a 1% property tax rate, they would owe $8,750. But with Proposition 19, if the property that they're gonna purchase after they sell their home costs less than, and this is the example here, they carry forward their property tax basis. There is no reassessment. That's how it works. That's how Proposition 19 is working when a property is sold and then the replacement property is less than. Very straightforward. And with Proposition 19, it's not limited to counties. This is statewide. There's no limit to the county, okay? And they are able to do this up to 3 times during their lifetime. So that it's very straightforward in situations where they sell the house and then they want to buy a property that costs less than. Any questions on this? Because this next slide, I'm going to go into a situation where they're going to sell a property, their property that they currently live in, and then they want to buy a property that costs more than. And in this situation, there's actually a calculation that needs to be performed. But any questions on this?
Oh, what is the 245 again? The property tax assessment basis? Where's that? Is that just a random number?
Yeah, so let's say they bought the property for $125,000 in 1975. Every year, your property tax basis goes up no more than 2%. So as of currently, their property tax assessment basis value is 245. I'm just using a hypothetical number. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You're saying it has to be done after April 21st.
Right.
Is there any retroactive or
That's what I want to know.
old rules? Can they still qualify to do it again under this scenario?
Yeah, there's nothing retroactive that is in this proposition, unfortunately.
I have a question about the Mills Act. Are you familiar with it?
No, but
Okay, so the Mills Act is for properties that have some historical significance. It's so you can use your saved tax amount to kind of reinvest into the property. So they reassess the property based on either Proposition 13 or another calculation, and you're taxed based upon, that new calculation. So when you sell it, that Mills Act value, the decreased property tax is a benefit to the new owner. But you've been paying that lower tax for, 7-8 years. What are they going to be, what's going to be the property tax assessment for a person like that when they make a new purchase?
yeah, that's a good question. I'm not familiar with this act that you're talking about, but if they whatever property that a senior has purchased, okay, someone that's 55 or older, it's basically what is the property going to sell for, okay? And that's the number that you need to figure out. And then what are they going to do with the money that they just sold it? Are they going to buy another property? Okay, if they're going to buy another property and the property costs less than what they just sold it for, that property tax basis that they had in the prior property gets carried forward into the new property. So I'm not
yeah, so I don't know if that's going to work with Mills Act. I don't know if you get to carry forward that decreased property tax benefit.
I'm pretty confident that, so Proposition 19 is it's statewide. So I have not seen anything that says that the Mills Act nullifies Proposition 19.
Louie, I think what Lorna's talking about, and I have the same question, because the Mills Act taxes are based on that specific property and its historic designation. So I do think it's something to be clarified, because you're not necessarily buying another Mills Act property. I mean, it's a pretty specific situation.
Okay, well, I'm not familiar with the Mills Act. I'm just going over how Proposition 19 works at a high level. So I guess if with the Mills Act, you'll want to talk to the county and figure out how that would work. But as far as I'm just going over Proposition 19, how it works for regular homes. I haven't seen anything that says that the Mills Act nullifies Proposition 19 or anything like that. So you guys are more than happy to check with the county or to see how that would potentially impact a situation.
Can I ask a
Any other
question?
questions?
Yeah,
Yes.
a lot of older people, maybe they're moving out of like LA. Obviously, we're all in LA, and they own their home together, and they want to downsize maybe in the city, but also say get a place in Santa Barbara or Carmel or wherever, so they have a smaller place, or maybe they want a small place here and a place near their kids. Is this something where they could potentially split Prop 19 if two people own the home, maybe put one of the homes in one of their names and the other in another name, so that they can take advantage of this, moving this property tax into two different properties?
No, that wouldn't work. There's nothing that says that they're able to split this into two properties.
If there are two. Because I know the way it used to be is that if you had two people, you could use it once for one person and then again for the second person. That's why I was wondering, because people that are older, this is a common scenario. Well, we'll get a condo here, but we want a house near the kids.
Yeah, well, they're able to utilize this 3 times during their lifetime. So you're not able to use this for 2 different properties. It's just from one property to another property. And then that second one, the replacement property, if you sell it again, Proposition 19 would come into effect again. So you're not able to put this into 2 properties. That would not work. Okay, so any other questions? Because as I go into situations when a new home costs, when they're gonna buy a property that costs more than. All right, so using this kind of the same facts as before, okay, what happens when someone wants to buy a property? They're gonna sell their property and then they're gonna buy a property that costs more than. A lot of the other proposition, I think it's Proposition 60, that there's only so many counties that were involved, and it only qualified for a property when they sell the property if they purchased a property that was equal than or less than. Proposition 19 changes things when they sell a property and a replacement property that they want to buy costs more than. So let's take a look and I'll show you guys how this works. So let's say they bought a property for $125,000 back in 1975, okay? And they're gonna sell the property for $950,000. That's essentially what their property that they currently live in is worth, okay? And based on their annual property tax assessments, their current property tax assessment basis value is $245,000. And assume a 1% property tax rate, their annual property taxes is $2,450. Now, once they sell this property, the replacement property that they want to buy is going to cost 1.5. So the new home is going to cost 1.5, and the fair market value sales price of the old home was 950. So this new property is going to cost $550,000 more than the old property. So whenever this situation occurs where they're going to sell their home and then buy a property that costs more than, this calculation here needs to be performed. And I made this as easy as easy. So let's go through it. The calculation that needs to be done is you're going to take the new property's purchase price, okay? The 1.5, all right? You're going to take the 1.5, then you're going to subtract the old property's sales price, the 950. You're going to subtract the 950. Then you have to add back the old property's tax assessment basis value, the 245. And that gives you what they're going to be reassessed on, okay? So $795,000. They would be reassessed on $795,000, okay? And again, assume a 1% property tax rate. So they're going to pay $7,950. They are not, without Proposition 19, they would have their property tax reassessed at the new purchase price of the 1.5. And again, assume a 1% property tax rate, they would owe $15,000 a year in property taxes. So instead of getting reassessed at 1.5, they're getting reassessed on pretty much half that, 795. So instead of having to get reassessed and pay $15,000, they're only going to pay $7,950. So this would save them $7,000 per year. So this is how it works when they're going to sell a property and then buy a property that costs them more. It's a very cool calculation, and I think this is really awesome on how this works. Any questions on this? Okay, great. So it sounds like you guys are catching on. So that's essentially how it works for Proposition 19 with properties that cost less than, and then properties that cost more than. What I'm going to get into next is kind of the caveat with Proposition 19. What happens with inherited investment properties? And let's get into this. I have a little bit of a situation here. Okay, so if a property is being inherited and it's being used as an investment property, which is a property that generates income, you will no longer inherit the property tax assessment basis value. It will be reassessed at the new fair market value, okay? So this is a little bit of a problem for beneficiaries because, they're going to potentially, if I'm inheriting a property, I'm no longer inheriting mom and dad's property tax basis value of whatever they bought it for. I'm going to be reassessed. So here's an example. Let's say mom and dad, they owned a triplex in Riverside County and they purchased it for $250,000 in 1995. Okay. And the current property tax assessment basis value is $325. And the current fair market value of the property is $1 million. Okay. So assuming a 1% property tax rate on the 325, they're paying $3,250 per year. Okay. So when mom and dad passed away, I'm now inheriting the property and I want to keep it because they're good tenants in the property. It cash flows positively every month. Let's even assume it's all paid off. So we're going to have a problem here because the property tax assessment is going to be based off of the $1 million fair market value. So my property taxes per year as the person that's inheriting it, the beneficiary, it's going to go from $3,250 all the way up to $10,000, assuming a 1% property tax rate on the $1 million reassessment. So it's going to be a $6,750 increase per year. And then as what very likely is going to happen is, the rents are going to have to be increased for the people living in the property. So this is the trade-off, if you will, with Proposition 19 on investment properties. This does not apply to, let's say I'm inheriting a property from my parents and I'm going to move into it, okay, and live in it. So if that's the case, then you will not have a reassessment. It's only situations where I'm inheriting a property and I want to use that property as an investment property. That's when you're going to have this reassessment. Any questions on this?
Is this circumventable if you put it in a trust or a LLC?
Yeah, so all a trust does, a trust just avoids probate. So that way when, if, my parents or whoever pass away and their assets are in a trust, that they pass away today, I basically have access to everything, the following day because it's in a trust. It doesn't go through the 12 to 24 month probate process if it was not in a trust. So that's all a trust does. And then an LLC, all an LLC does, me personally, I hate LLCs. I think they're expensive, false sense of securities. But all an LLC does is provide legal liability protection. It's just separate. It's just creating a corporate veil between the business, whatever asset is in there, and then your personal. There's a veil that exists. So an LLC or a trust, it's pretty much irrelevant. What they're looking at is a property was inherited. Okay, what are you doing with the property now that you've inherited? Okay. Single family homes, that's probably the easiest because single family home, very likely you're going to either move into it, sell it. But if that single family home is used as an if you're going to rent it out, then you would have to go through a reassessment. Investment properties, multifamily properties, commercial properties, all of those, the counties are going to be policing this very much so because there's a lot of money here that's going to be made. So
Can I ask?
LLCs and trusts are pretty much irrelevant. Good question though. Good question.
What about like if you're on that title for instance, your parents are on the title and then they put you on title or they put you on that trust or whatever with like right of survivorship, does it still get inherited or does it get just transferred over by right of survivorship?
Yeah, if you're on title, if you're already on title, then there is no inheriting. There is no inheritance because you're on title.
Then couldn't you avoid the, like if you, I mean, obviously for inheritance, unexpected deaths, but prior to, if you know, then couldn't you just kind of put them on title to avoid this inheritance situation?
Yeah, you can do that, but then you would lose what's called a step up in basis on inherited properties. So there's something called a step up in basis. It's in relation to capital gains. So step up in basis. Here's a quick example. I don't have a visual aid, but I'll just try to explain this. So you're thinking right, but you're shooting yourself in the foot because you're going to lose the step up in basis. So what step up in basis is let's say my parents or whoever, let's say they bought a property for $250,000, okay, 30 years ago. And currently it's worth $1 million. Make sense? As long as I'm not on title, not involved or anything like that, you know, I'm not on title. That's the biggest thing.
Okay.
When I inherit it, okay, my basis in the property, that it's no longer so you see how if my parents, they bought it for $250,000 and it's worth $1 million, if they were to sell it, there's a capital gain there of $750,000, a significant capital gain.
Right.
So when I inherit it, as long as I'm not on title, I get a step up in the basis. Now what I'm into the property is the fair market value at the time of the death. So
Okay, so you
it's
avoid the
worth-
capital gain.
Exactly. So if it's worth $1 million at the time of the death, it doesn't matter that mom and dad bought it for $250,000. Now what I'm into it is the $1 million. So I'm into it $1 million. I sell it for $1 million, then I have no capital gain. Exactly. So yeah,
So-
you can put someone on title to avoid this reassessment on the property taxes, but you're shooting yourself in the foot because now you're very likely going to have a significant capital gain if you decide to sell it.
Got it. Okay.
So can I ask?
Great question.
Yeah, but so I'm a little confused on that because we're talking about investment properties, but what if it's a primary residence, your parents live in a $3 million house and you inherit it? Are you saying that with this Prop 19, if your child actually chooses to live in that house, that they can get both Prop 19 benefit as well as the step up basis, or is it always going to be one or the other?
So you get the step up in basis on inherited properties. That's by default. Okay, that's by default. That's a capital gains tax. Okay, that's by default. You get that. You get that. So irrelevant of Proposition 19, as long as you're not on title, and when you inherit the property, you get a step up in the basis. Now, what happens with a single family residence, any type of property that you're inheriting, they're going to look, okay, so you've inherited this single family home, like you said, for $3 million. Okay, so now that you've inherited, what are you doing with it? Okay, are you going to move into it? Okay, well, now that's your primary residence and there is no reassessment. Okay, are you going to use it as kind of a secondary home? Okay, great, no reassessment. What they're looking for is, are you going to use the property as an investment property? Are you going to be making money? So if I inherited this property, this $3 million single family home, and I put renters in there, okay, now I'm making money off of the property. That's when you're going to be reassessed.
So you can, so if your child with inheriting, they can both the step up and the Prop 19 benefit of low property taxes. That's
Sure.
because I had heard at one point that capped at $1 million value, which, you know, there's not a whole lot of that out here. So
Right.
is that true? Is there anything where that comes into play or no?
Yeah, I mean, it does come into play. What I'm trying to draft. So you're getting into details. I'm not trying to get into details. I'm just trying to get like a high level, just kind of like information here.
Okay, I get, there's gonna be a follow-up that is a little bit more detailed. Just curious, because that is what I need.
Well, if there's enough people that want like more detailed information, then yeah, we're more than happy, yeah.
Louie, I think just one simple question on that would be is there a cap on the value of the property in order to receive the benefit?
So is there value on the cap to receive a benefit? To receive what benefit?
Is there a cap on the value of the property in terms of, so you're saying the $3 million property is treated just like a property that's under $1 million? There's no, the value of the property there, it doesn't matter. Is that what you're saying?
Doesn't matter, yeah. The value of the property is irrelevant.
Okay.
Thank you, Jen.
So that's pretty much everything in a nutshell, like the Proposition 19 that you guys are going to want to know. Again, if you guys want this handout, feel free to email Erin and she can send this to you guys and then you guys can have it. The biggest thing to take away when you guys are out, dealing with your guys' clients, the biggest thing to take away is this calculation. I guarantee you that this calculation here on a property, if someone that wants to sell a property and then buy another property that costs more, this calculation here, this is something that you guys will have, and I guarantee you're going to stand out if you're dealing with a client because you actually know this, and it's very, very simple.
Problem is this really discourages people for holding property within their family, and I think this is a really bad part of Proposition 19. How does
are you talking about this this inherited property aspect?
Yeah, I don't see anything positive.
I would agree. I think what's gonna happen is a distressed property or a property that was barely making it. What's gonna happen is people once they hear about the fact that now we're gonna get reassessed at the fair market value, people are just gonna be very motivated to sell. And I can tell you guys, now that there's a completely democratic control over our government, it's very likely that Biden, there's very likely two big things that Biden's going to get rid of. Biden's talking about getting rid of the Section 1031 exchange. That would be, I don't know how, now the Board of Real Estate would really fight that, but it sounds like he really wants to get rid of that, and he also wants to get rid of the capital gain step up in basis. So those are two things that potentially might be leaving us. But I would agree, this aspect of Proposition 19, it's really negative. The carrying over if it costs less than, or a reassess a calculation, a favorable calculation. These are the positives. But yes, this is a negative, and I would agree.
It's just going to make it harder for everybody that's middle class that's trying to get somewhere in the world by getting property, and it's just going to make the difference between the rich and poor even greater, because the multi-millionaires they're not going to feel it the same way as somebody who has one or two properties.
Yeah, just imagine imagine it from the commercial aspects. Mom and dad, have a nice little commercial retail area, and now I'm inheriting it and I want to continue to use that commercial property as an investment property. Man, now I'm going to be reassessed, and then, that all gets passed on to essentially the tenants. So, even in the commercial real estate market's really struggling. This is going to make things a lot worse.
Yeah. With rent control, you can't even raise the rents if this happens.
Yeah. So what happens with the rent control as well? Yeah. There's some things here that aren't so good, but there's good and there's bad here.
What happens if you own the property out of state Is it, can they get you somehow?
Yeah, this isn't, Proposition 19 only applies to California real estate. Non-California real estate, it's irrelevant.
Good.
I have a question for you. Could you potentially add someone to title before they pass away? And that way you don't get reassessed because they're already on the title before that happens?
Yeah, that's a great question. Someone just asked that a little while ago. So what you just thought of would definitely defeat this Proposition 19 because they're on title. So now when, whoever passes away, there is no inheritance because I'm already on title, right? There is no inheritance because I'm already on the title. So there would be no reassessment. So that would work as far as the annual property tax reassessment. What you're going to lose out on is the capital gain step up in basis. And what that capital gain step up in basis, how that works is, let's say my parents bought a property for $250,000 30 years ago. And now today that property is worth $1 million, okay? So I inherited it, right? So now I want to sell it. So the property is worth $1 million and mom and dad bought it for $250,000. I have a capital gain of $750,000. But what happens is when I inherit it, my basis, when I'm into the property, it gets stepped up from the $250,000 to the fair market value of the property at the time of the death. So if the property is worth $1 million at the time of the death, and I'm going to sell it for $1 million, there would be no capital gain. Those would offset. Does that make sense?
Kind of. I'm a little bit confused.
Louie,
Okay,
how much time do you have to sell?
How much
Louie,
time?
it's
one more time?
Star. I'm sorry. How much time?
I'm booked on this till 1 o'clock.
No, how much time does somebody get to have to sell the property, the inherited property, before they would have to just pay capital gains if they don't put it into another property?
Okay. So let's just look at this example, all right? So understand that there's capital gains and then there's property taxes. There's capital gains tax and there's property taxes. Proposition 19 is in relation to property taxes. What you guys don't sound like you, so the whole step up in basis, okay? So let's say my parents bought a property for $250,000, all right? And it's worth $1 million, okay? And I inherit it. So I want to sell this property that's worth $1 million, and mom and dad bought it for $250,000. So $1 million minus $250,000, that is a capital gains now of $750,000. Okay. Well, there's something called a step up in basis on inherited properties. So mom and dad's basis, what they purchased it for, $250,000, that gets stepped up to whatever the fair market value of the property was at the time of the death. So the 250 gets stepped up to $1 million now. So if I sell the property for $1 million, I just got stepped up from the $250,000 purchase price that my mom and dad bought it for to now $1 million. So if I sell it for $1 million, I get to deduct $1 million out of that, and now I have no capital gains.
Now it makes sense. So you're saying basically because it's stepped up and it's at $1 million, and that only happens at the time of the death, you don't pay a tax on it.
Exactly. So your rationale was basically let's put them on title, and then now there's no reassessment. Yeah, that works. That works really well based off of your rationale. But you're not taking into account to the fact that now I am not going to get the step up in basis.
So what's a better situation then?
There's really there's no like real workaround on this. And understand that this only applies to properties that are going to be used as investment properties. So, if I'm going to move into the property and live in it, or if I'm going to keep the property that I inherited and use it as like a second home, there is no reassessment because I'm using it as a personal residence. It's only when I plan on using a property that I inherited as an investment property that a reassessment is going to occur. So those are really good questions. And then you guys, I showed you guys Erin's email. You guys are more than happy to reach out to Erin and she can email this to you. If there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. If not, then we can pretty much close this down. But really appreciate everyone being here. A really good group, really good questions. And I hope you guys learned something here that will help you guys in your day-to-day operations. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And
Thank
can I get the Erin's emails again?
Yeah, let me put this in the chat. Erin.
Do you think you can put the calculation in that email, include that calculation in the email so that we don't forget it?
What do you mean?
Or maybe just put it in the chat, that calculation that you were talking about when you're actually buying a property that is of higher value.
Yeah. Just email Erin and she'll send you guys the PDF. That way you have it and you'll have it right there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I put it in the chat, Erin's email, guys. So send it to her and she'll get back to you within 10-15 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, guys, and then we'll likely be doing another seminar within the next couple of weeks on the new PPP loans for those of you who are trying to get in on a second PPP loan. We're going to be going over if you qualify and what you would qualify for. So, okay, so John, Joey. Yeah, John, I'll have Erin, I believe you're in contact with Erin. I'll have her email you that PDF as well. So that way you can distribute it to your team over there. So I'll let Erin know, John, appreciate it. Okay, guys, thanks a lot for everything. It's a great time here and everyone have a great rest of the week. Take care, all right?
Thank you.